The ship landed on Prime just as the three suns began to set. Park stood at the window and watched the alien sky turn purple and gold. She had traveled for 6 months through deep space to reach this place. The Galactic Combat Academy, the most famous warrior school in the known universe. She was 23 years old. She stood only 1.6 meters tall. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her dark eyes held a calm that most people found unsettling. Back on Earth, her teachers had called her gifted. Her master, an old man named, had called her something else entirely. "You are not gifted," he had told her once while she lay bleeding on the training floor. "You are hungry, that is better." Now she carried that hunger across the stars. The academy was enormous. It sat on a mountain that had been carved flat by ancient machines. The buildings were made of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Thousands of alien species walked the paths between training halls, dormitories, and weapons facilities. Saw creatures with 4 arms, 6 legs, wings, tails, and bodies made of pure energy. She saw giants that stood 10 meters tall and beings so small they floated in protective bubbles. And everywhere she looked, she saw warriors. A guard stopped her at the main gate. He was over 2 meters tall, covered in silver scales, and had 4 muscular arms. Each arm held a different weapon. He looked down at like she was an insect. "Human," he said, his voice was deep and rough. "You are the one from Earth." "Yes." "You are small." Did not respond to this. She had heard it before, she would hear it again. The guard checked her documentation and waved her through. She walked into the academy with her single bag over her shoulder and her heart beating steady in her chest. The orientation hall was filled with new recruits, counted at least 50 different species in the room. Some sat in chairs, others hung from the ceiling. A few floated in tanks of colored liquid. She found a seat near the back and waited. The instructor arrived exactly on time. He was like the guard, but older and larger. His silver scales had turned gray at the edges, and deep scars crossed his face and arms. He moved with the careful grace of someone who had killed many times and expected to kill many more. "I am Instructor," he said. His voice filled the hall without effort. "I have trained warriors for 40 years. I have seen recruits from 300 species pass through these halls. Some became legends. Most became corpses. You will learn which category you belong to." He began to pace across the front of the room. His 4 arms were clasped behind his back. "The Galactic Combat Academy exists for one purpose. We create soldiers who can fight in any environment, against any enemy, using any weapon. When you graduate from this academy, you will be among the deadliest beings in the known universe. If you graduate." He stopped and looked across the room. His eyes moved from face to face, studying each recruit. "Before we begin, you must understand one truth. Every species has limitations. Biology determines capability. This is not opinion, this is fact." He pointed at a large creature covered in thick armor plates. "Your shells make you nearly invincible to physical attack, but you are slow. You will never be fast." He pointed at a thin being with multiple eyes. "Your vision is perfect. You can see in every spectrum, but your bodies are fragile. One strong hit will kill you." His finger moved to humans. "You are classified as mid-tier combatants, adequate strength, decent reflexes, good endurance, but nothing exceptional. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special senses. You survive through numbers and technology, not individual ability." Kept her face blank. She had heard similar things her whole life. On Earth, people had told her she was too small to fight, too weak, too female. She had stopped listening to such words long ago. Walked to a weapons rack that stood against the wall. It held hundreds of weapons from across the galaxy. Blades, guns, staffs, whips, things that could not even name. He picked up 2 identical swords. They were beautiful weapons with curved blades that glowed with blue energy. "These are plasma blades," he said. Standard close combat weapons, effective against most armor types, easy to learn, difficult to master. He held up both swords, one in each of his upper hands. Now I will tell you the most important limitation of all. No species in recorded galactic history has successfully mastered dual-wielding in live combat. A murmur went through the room. Some recruits looked confused. Others nodded as if they already knew this. I can hold two weapons, continued. I can swing them at the same time, but true dual-wielding means something more. It means using each weapon independently, different targets, different angles, different timing, while also maintaining full awareness of the battlefield around you. He shook his head. The neural processing required exceeds biological capability. Even species with multiple brains cannot achieve it. Your mind simply cannot coordinate independent weapon trajectories while tracking enemy movements, planning attacks, and protecting yourself. He set the swords back on the rack. Some of you may think you are special. You may think you can be the first to break this rule. You are wrong. Millions have tried, all have failed. In true combat, dual-wielding will get you killed. Remember this. Watched the instructor carefully. She thought about Master back on Earth. She thought about the 12 years she had spent in his training hall. She thought about the 2 wooden swords that hung on her wall at home. Master had never told her anything was impossible. He had only told her to practice more. After the orientation, walked through the academy grounds. The alien stars were bright overhead, and the air smelled strange and clean. She found a quiet corner near a garden of glowing plants and sat down to think. She was not angry at Instructor. He was speaking from his experience and his knowledge. He had trained thousands of warriors. He had seen what worked and what did not, but knew something that did not know. Humans were different. Not better, not stronger, not smarter, just different. On Earth, humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had invented countless ways to kill and countless ways to survive. They had pushed their bodies and minds past every limit, again and again, generation after generation. Other species evolved claws, fangs, armor, and venom. Humans evolved stubbornness. Closed her eyes and remembered her training. She remembered the first time Master had put 2 swords in her hands. She had been 11 years old. The wooden blades had felt heavy and wrong. Your left hand does not know what your right hand is doing, had said. Teach them to speak to each other. She had practiced that day until her arms could not move. Then she had rested and practiced again, day after day, month after month, year after year. 10,000 repetitions before she held real blades. 10,000 more before she could use them. 10,000 more before the 2 swords became extensions of her body, as natural as her own hands. Opened her eyes and looked up at the alien stars. Instructor was right about one thing. Biology determined capability. But he was wrong about humans. He thought he knew what humans were capable of. He had no idea. The weeks passed quickly at the academy. Woke before dawn every day, trained until her body screamed for rest, and then trained some more. She learned new weapons, new fighting styles, and new ways to move her body. She studied the techniques of 100 different species. And slowly, she began to earn respect. It started in the sparring rings. The academy matched recruits against each other based on size and skill level, was placed in the lowest category at first: small, weak, human, easy prey. Her first opponent was unnamed. He had 6 arms, each ending in sharp claws, and he moved with the speed of a striking snake. He looked at and made a sound that might have been laughter. "A human," he said, "this will be quick." Said nothing. She picked up a training sword and waited. Attacked first. He was fast, faster than any human could be. His claws came at her from 6 directions at once, but was not where his claws expected her to be. She had read his body. She had seen the tension in his legs before he moved. She had known where he would strike before he knew it himself. Master had taught her this. Watch the body, not the weapons. The body tells the truth. Step to the side, let the claws pass by her face, and brought her sword across exposed neck. The training blade touched his scales gently. Kill point, the combat monitor announced. Stood frozen in shock. The fight had lasted 2 seconds. After that they moved to a higher category, then higher again, then higher still. She fought with their heavy armor. She learned to find the gaps in their shells and strike where they were soft. She fought with their 4 arms. She learned to read the rhythm of their attacks and slip between the beats. She fought creatures she had no name for, with abilities she had never seen before. She lost sometimes. Every warrior lost. But she learned from each loss, and she did not lose the same way twice. By the end of the 2nd month had earned a reputation. The small human who fought like water, the quiet girl who could not be touched. But respect was not the same as acceptance. Many of the alien recruits still looked at her with doubt. They saw her victories, but they did not believe them. How could a human, a mid-tier species with no special gifts, defeat warriors who were born for combat? It had to be luck. It had to be tricks. It had to be something other than true skill. The whispers followed her everywhere. She only wins because opponents underestimate her. She would lose against a real fighter. Humans are not warriors. Everyone knows this. Ignored the whispers. Words were just sounds. Only actions mattered. But some of the recruits wanted more than whispers. His name was. He was a young, barely older than, but already one of the top fighters in the academy. He had silver scales like Instructor, 4 powerful arms, and eyes that burned with pride. His family had produced warriors for 20 generations. His father was a general in the Galactic Defense Force. His mother was a legendary blade master. Had never lost a fight at the academy. He did not like that a human was earning attention that should have been his. One evening was practicing alone in the training hall. She preferred this time when the other recruits were eating or resting. The silence helped her focus. The emptiness let her move without distraction. She was working on forms, basic movements repeated thousands of times until the body knew them better than the mind. Slash, block, turn, strike, step, slash again. She heard him before she saw him. Walked into the training hall with 3 other recruits behind him. They spread out, blocking the exits. Their intentions were clear. Lowered her training sword and turned to face them. "Little human," said, his voice dripped with contempt. "Practicing alone again. Are you afraid to train with real warriors?" "I prefer the quiet," said simply. Laughed, the others laughed with him. "You have been making noise," he said, walking closer. "Everyone is talking about the human who wins fights, the human who moves like water, the human who might be special." He stopped a few meters away from her. His 4 arms were crossed over his broad chest. "But I know the truth. You are not special. You are a small, weak creature from a small, weak species. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor, no extra limbs. You have nothing." Waited. "Your victories are flukes," continued. "You win because your opponents do not take you seriously. They do not prepare. They do not fight at their best. If a true warrior fought you with full effort, you would be destroyed in seconds." "Perhaps," said. This surprised. He had expected her to argue, to defend herself, to show anger. "Perhaps," he repeated. "Perhaps you are right," said. "I am small, I am human, I have no natural weapons." She tilted her head slightly. "But I'm still standing here, and you are still talking." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Scales shifted to a darker shade, a sign of anger among his species. "You dare to mock me." "I am not mocking you," said. "I am waiting for you to do something other than speak." One of the other moved forward, but held up an arm to stop him. "You want action," said. "Fine, tomorrow in the main arena we fight. A formal challenge. The whole academy will watch. And when I defeat you, everyone will see what you really are. Nodded acceptable. Had expected fear. He had expected hesitation. He had expected anything other than calm acceptance. You are strange, he said. Do you not understand that I am the best fighter in this academy? I have trained since I could walk. I have 4 arms to your 2. I am faster, stronger, and more skilled than you will ever be. Walked past him toward the weapons rack. She picked up a second training sword, holding one in each hand. Then she turned back to face him. You have told me everything you are, she said, but you have not asked what I am. She dropped into a stance, both blades held ready, her body perfectly balanced, her eyes locked on his. What are you doing? Asked. Defining something. Stared at the human holding 2 swords. He remembered Instructor's words. No species can dual-wield. It was impossible. The neural processing required exceeded biological capability. But the human woman standing before him did not look like she was doing something impossible. She looked comfortable, natural, ready. You cannot dual-wield, said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Define cannot, said quietly. For a long moment no one moved. The training hall was silent. The air felt thick and heavy. Then turned and walked away. His followers went with him. Tomorrow, he called back over his shoulder. In the arena, the whole academy will watch. Lowered her swords. She stood alone in the empty training hall, breathing slowly, her heart steady. Tomorrow would come. She was ready for it. She had been ready for this moment her entire life. The main arena was full. Word had spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. A human had challenged, or had challenged a human. The details did not matter. What mattered was that 2 of the most talked-about recruits in the academy would fight, and everyone wanted to see. Hundreds of aliens filled the seats that rose around the circular fighting floor. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some floated. Some hung from the ceiling. Some watched through screens because they were too large or too small to fit in regular seats. Instructor stood in a private viewing box with other senior staff members. His silver scales were still, but his eyes were sharp with interest. The human will lose, said Instructor Vila, a blade master who taught advanced combat techniques. Is too skilled, too fast, too strong. Said nothing. He had been watching the human closely for the past 2 months. He had seen things that troubled his understanding of the universe. On the arena floor stood waiting. She wore simple training clothes. Her hair was tied back tight. Her face showed no emotion. In her hands she held 2 swords, real plasma blades this time, not training weapons. The blue energy hummed softly in the air. Entered from the opposite side of the arena. The crowd made sounds of approval. He was a favorite among many species. Strong, proud, born from a legendary bloodline. He carried 2 swords as well. 2 plasma blades, one in each of his upper hands. His lower hands held shorter blades, curved and wicked-looking. 4 weapon, 4 arms, the advantage of his species. You hold 2 swords, called across the arena. Do you think this will impress anyone? Holding is not the same as using. Did not respond. The combat monitor appeared above the arena. A floating orb that would track movements, score hits, and stop the fight if necessary. Formal challenge accepted, the monitor announced. Of Clan versus Park of Earth. Combat rules, first to 3 kill points wins. Lethal strikes are prohibited, begin on signal. The arena fell silent. Breathed in, out. She thought about Master. She thought about the first time he had put 2 swords in her hands. She thought about all the years of practice, all the pain, all the failures that had led to this moment. The body believes what the mind repeats. She had repeated this belief 10,000 times 10,000. The signal sounded. Attacked. He was fast, faster than she had expected. All four arms moved at once, four blades coming at her from four different angles: high, low, left, right. A wall of deadly energy that should have been impossible to block. But was not there. She had moved before his blades reached her, stepping to the side with a dancer's grace. Her left sword came up to deflect his upper right strike. Her right sword slashed toward his exposed flank. Twisted away just in time. The blade missed by centimeters. The crowd gasped. Lucky growled. He attacked again, faster this time, more aggressive. His four arms worked in perfect coordination, each blade following its own path while supporting the others. This was what they were famous for. Their species could coordinate multiple limbs in ways that seemed supernatural to other races. Four weapons dancing together, creating patterns that were almost impossible to penetrate. Fell back, blocking and deflecting. Her two swords moved constantly, redirecting attacks she could not avoid, finding gaps between the four blades when they appeared. The crowd watched in confusion. The human should have been dead by now. Why was she still standing? In the viewing box, Instructor leaned forward. He saw something that the crowd could not see. He saw the way the human swords moved independently, not just blocking the same attack from two angles, but tracking different threats at the same time. Her left blade watched his upper arms. Her right blade watched his lower arms. Two separate defensive patterns, two separate streams of awareness. Impossible, and yet there it was. Felt the difference too. He was landing no solid hits. Every strike was deflected or avoided. The small human moved like smoke, like water, like something that could not be touched. Frustration began to build in his chest. Stand still, he roared, pressing his attack harder. Smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but saw it. And then she changed. She stopped retreating. She attacked. Her left sword came at his upper left arm while her right sword targeted his lower right leg. Two completely different attacks, two completely different directions, at the same time. His mind tried to process this. His species was supposed to be the masters of multi-limb combat, but the human swords were moving independently in a way that made no sense. He blocked the high attack but missed the low one. Her blade touched his leg. "Kill Point Park," the combat monitor announced. The arena erupted in noise, shock, disbelief, excitement, fear. Stared at the human. His scales had gone pale, the color of surprise among his people. "How?" he whispered. Did not answer. She reset her stance, both blades ready. Attacked again. This time he held nothing back. He was faster than before, more desperate. He could not lose to a human. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. But met him without fear. Their blades crashed together again and again. The sound of plasma against plasma filled the arena like thunder. They moved so fast that most of the watchers could not follow their movements. But Instructor could follow. He watched the human's form with growing amazement. Her left arm and right arm moved independently, as if controlled by separate minds. Yet they also worked together, supporting each other, covering each other's weaknesses. This was not the clumsy dual-wielding that other species had tried. This was something else entirely. This was mastery. Found her opening. Overextended on an upper strike. His lower arms moved to compensate, but not fast enough. His right sword blocked his upper blade. At the same instant, her left sword slipped through his defense and touched his chest. "Kill Point Park." The crowd noise rose to a roar. 2 points. One more and the human would win. Stepped back, breathing hard. His pride was crumbling. Everything he had believed about himself, about his species, about humans, was crumbling with it. "This is not possible," he said. "Define possible," replied. She attacked before he could respond. Her swords came at him from angles he could not predict. Each blade followed its own path, making its own decisions, yet somehow they coordinated perfectly. He blocked one, and the other was already past his defense. He blocked that one, and the first had reset for a new attack. He felt like he was fighting two opponents at once. In a way, he was. The final strike came before he even saw it. Her left sword engaged all four of his blades, holding them for just a fraction of a second. Her right sword, moving independently, curved around his defense and touched his throat. Kill Point Park, Victory Park. The arena fell silent. Then the noise began, cheering, arguing, screaming. 1,000 different reactions from 100 different species. But heard none of it. She lowered her swords and looked at. He was kneeling on the ground, his four arms limp at his sides. He stared at her with eyes that held no more pride, only questions. How? He asked again. This time answered. I practiced. She turned and walked out of the arena. Behind her, the galaxy began to reconsider everything it knew about humans. The message came the next morning. Was eating breakfast alone in the dining hall when her personal communicator buzzed. The message was short and formal. Report to Instructor, private office, immediately. She finished her meal calmly, washed her dishes, and walked across the academy grounds to the Instructor's building. Other recruits watched her as she passed, some with admiration, some with fear, some with anger. Her victory over had changed things. She had done the impossible. She had proven the Academy's teachings wrong, and not everyone was happy about it. Instructor's office was at the top of the building. The door opened as she approached, sliding into the wall without a sound. She stepped inside. The room was simple, a desk made of dark wood, a few chairs, weapons on the walls old and honored, a window that looked out over the Academy training grounds. Sat behind the desk. His four arms were folded, and his silver scales were darker than usual. Sit, he said. Sat in the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, studied her face, searching for something, waited patiently, her hands resting in her lap. Finally spoke. How? It was the same question it asked, the same question that everyone was asking, but heard something different in the way asked it. Not disbelief, not anger, curiosity, a true desire to understand. What do you know about human training methods? She asked. Tilted his head. I know what the records say. Your species develops warriors through repetitive practice, drills, exercises, nothing unusual. How many repetitions would a need to master a basic sword form? Considered the question. For true mastery, perhaps 5,000, more for complex forms. And once mastered, the skill is permanent. Of course, our neural pathways lock the patterns into our biology. This is how all species work. Nodded slowly. For humans, it is different. She leaned back in her chair. I began training with Master when I was 11 years old. He was an old man then, and he is an old man now. He taught me the way his master taught him, and the way that Master's master taught before that, a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. Listened without interrupting. On my first day, Master gave me a wooden sword. He showed me one movement, a simple downward cut. He told me to repeat it until he said stop. How many times? He did not say stop for 3 hours. I do not know how many times I performed the movement. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. By the end, I could not lift my arms. I fell to the floor and could not move. Scales shifted slightly. Among his species, pushing a child to such exhaustion would be considered abuse. What happened next? He asked. I rested for 1 hour, then he told me to continue. That is extreme. That is human, said simply. We do not learn like other species. Our neural pathways do not lock automatically. We must force them to lock through repetition beyond what seems reasonable, beyond what seems possible. She held up her hands, palms facing up. Before Master let me hold real swords, I had performed 10,000 repetitions of every basic form, 10,000 cuts, 10,000 blocks, 10,000 steps, each one. Did the math in his head. The numbers were staggering. That would take years, he said. It took 3 years before I touched a real blade, 3 more years before I could spar, 3 more before I could fight, and 3 more before Master said I was ready. 12 years of training. 12 years before I was allowed to consider myself a beginner. The room fell silent. Stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the training grounds below, where hundreds of recruits from dozens of species practiced combat techniques. I have trained warriors for 40 years, he said slowly. I have seen natural geniuses who could master forms in days. I have seen hard workers who took months, but I have never seen anyone train the way you describe. Humans are not geniuses, said. We have no natural gifts, no special abilities. We are not faster or stronger or smarter than most species, but we have one thing that others do not. What is that? Thought about how to explain it, how to put into words something that was so natural to her people that they rarely even discussed it. On Earth, she said, there is a concept called obsession. It means wanting something so badly that you are willing to suffer endlessly to achieve it. Pain becomes acceptable. Failure becomes expected. Time becomes meaningless. You simply keep trying again and again until you succeed or die. Turned to look at her. All species want things, he said. All species try to achieve goals. Yes, but do they try after failing 1,000 times, 10,000 times? Do they continue when their bodies break, when their minds tell them to stop, when everyone around them says it is impossible? She stood and walked to stand beside him at the window. Humans do, not all of us, but enough. Enough obsessed people trying impossible things for impossible lengths of time, sometimes succeeding. And when they succeed, they teach others. And those others practice 10,000 times 10,000 until the impossible becomes possible. Was silent for a long moment. The dual-wielding, he said finally. How? Master put 2 swords in my hands when I was 11. He told me that my left hand and my right hand were strangers who did not speak the same language. He told me to teach them to communicate. And I practiced every day for 12 years. My arms moved in different patterns. My mind learned to split its attention. At first I could not even walk while holding 2 swords. By the end I could fight in my sleep. She looked at the instructor. Your species coordinates 4 arms naturally. Your neural pathways are designed for it. For humans, coordinating 2 arms independently is not natural at all. It feels wrong. It hurts. Our brains resist it with everything they have. Then how did you overcome this resistance? Smiled slightly. I practiced more than my brain could resist. Returned to his desk and sat down heavily. His scales had shifted to a color that did not recognize. Confusion, perhaps, or wonder. I have studied human history, he said. Your species nearly destroyed itself many times. Wars, weapons, self-inflicted catastrophes. We assumed this was because humans were violent and foolish. We are sometimes violent and often foolish, admitted. But there is another explanation. What? We kept pushing limits. We kept trying things that should not work. We kept breaking ourselves and rebuilding ourselves stronger. Your species looks at what is possible and works within those boundaries. Humans look at what is impossible and ask why. Leaned back in his chair. You are not a mid-tier species, he said quietly. No, agreed. We are something else entirely, something that your classification systems do not have a category for. What category would you suggest? Thought about it for a moment. Unfinished, she said finally. We are still learning what we can become. She bowed slightly to the instructor and walked toward the door. One more question, called after her. She stopped and turned. What would happen if more humans trained the way you were trained? Consider the question seriously. I do not know, she said honestly, but I intend to find out. She left the office and walked out into the bright light of the three suns. Behind her, Instructor sat alone with his thoughts. For 40 years, he had believed he understood the universe. Now he was not sure he understood anything at all. The news spread faster than light. Video of fight against was and shared across the galaxy. Communications networks carried it from planet to planet. Species that had never heard of humans watched a small woman defeat a four-armed warrior using 2 swords. Within days, the story had reached Earth. Master was in his training hall when his grandson showed him the video. He watched without expression as his student moved through forms he had taught her years ago. He watched her blades dance independently, following patterns that he had drilled into her muscles through endless repetition. When the video ended, his grandson looked at him expectantly. "Well," the young man asked, "what do you think?" Master smiled. It was a rare expression on his weathered face. "I think she is finally ready to begin learning," he said. On Prime, life at the academy was changing. Still trained every day, she still attended classes, she still sparred with other recruits, but now everywhere she went she was watched, studied, questioned. Some species were curious. They wanted to understand how she had done the impossible. Some species were afraid. If humans could master dual wielding, what else could they master? Some species were angry. They especially felt threatened. Their entire culture was built on the idea that their 4 arms made them superior warriors. One human with 2 swords had challenged everything they believed, but was not among the angry ones. He came to see 1 week after their fight. She was practicing alone again, in the same training hall where he had first confronted her. This time, he came without followers. "I have been thinking," he said. Lowered her swords and waited. "I have trained since I could walk. I have always been the best, the strongest, the fastest. I never questioned why. I assumed it was because I was born superior." He sat down on the floor, his 4 arms hanging loose at his sides. "But you were not born superior. You were born weak, small, gifted with nothing, and you became better than me anyway." Sat down across from him. "I was not better than you," she said. "I was differently trained." "Differently?" "Your training taught you to use the gifts you were born with. My training taught me to create gifts I was not born with." Considered this. Can anyone learn to do what you do? "I do not know," admitted, "but I believe so. Humans have no special talent for suffering. We simply have a culture that accepts it. Accepts suffering. Expects it, honors it, believes that anything worth having must be earned through pain." Shook his head slowly. "My people believe in natural ability. If you are born strong, you become a warrior. If you are born weak, you find another path. We do not try to change what nature has given us. And that," said quietly, "is why I beat you." The silence stretched between them. "Will you teach me?" asked finally. Raised an eyebrow. "Teach you what?" "To suffer, to practice beyond reason, to become more than I was born to be." Looked at the warrior. He had been her enemy. He had mocked her, threatened her, tried to humiliate her. But now she saw something different in his eyes. Hunger. The same hunger that Master had seen in her, all those years ago. "It will hurt," she warned him. "Good." Smiled. 2 months later, the Galactic Defense Council sent representatives to the Academy. 3 admirals from 3 different species arrived in a ship made of crystal and light. They came to observe the human who had shaken the foundations of combat theory. Instructor arranged a demonstration. The main arena was filled again, but this time the crowd was different. Military officers, scientists, political leaders, people who made decisions that affected billions of lives across thousands of worlds, entered the arena alone. She wore the same simple training clothes she always wore. She carried 2 plasma blades. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. The council had asked for a demonstration of her abilities. She would give them one. 3 opponents entered the arena. The 3 species that dominated the Galactic Defense Force. Each was a trained warrior selected to challenge her. "Begin," the combat monitor announced. They attacked together. 12 limbs bearing weapons came at from 3 directions. Any normal warrior would have been overwhelmed in seconds. There was simply too much to track, too many threats to address. But was not a normal warrior. She had spent 12 years training her mind to split its attention. 12 years teaching her left hand to work independently from her right. 12 years building neural pathways that should not exist. Now she put all that training to use. Her left sword engaged the upper attacks while her right sword blocked the claws. She stepped in a pattern that kept the heavy strikes from landing. She moved like smoke, like water, like something that existed between the attacks rather than in front of them. One by one, she defeated them. The fell first, touched by a blade he never saw coming. The fell second, outsmarted by movements that made no sense to his armored mind. The fell last, overwhelmed by attacks from angles he could not predict. 3 opponents, 3 victories, less than 2 minutes. The arena was silent. Then one of the admirals stood. She was a tall being made entirely of light, her form shifting and flowing like a living flame. "We want her," the admiral said, "leading a special unit, training others, changing how we fight our wars." Instructor looked at, shook her head. "I will not lead your armies," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "But I will offer something else." "What?" "I will train others, humans. We have billions on Earth who have never been given a chance to learn what they can become. Your classification systems call us mid-tier. You measure our bodies and judge us limited, but you have not measured our determination." The admiral's form flickered with interest. "You want to create more warriors like yourself. I want to find out what humans can truly become. Not one human, many, trained in methods that push past biological limits, taught to suffer for their goals, given the time and opportunity to transform themselves." She looked around the arena at the gathered leaders. "You have ruled this galaxy for thousands of years because you believed you understood the nature of species. You thought strength came from evolution, from natural gifts, from the biology you were born with. But you were wrong." She raised her 2 swords. "Strength comes from choice, from will, from the decision to keep trying when everything tells you to stop. Humans are not born strong. We become strong, and we can become anything." The message reached Earth 3 days later. Master received it in his training hall. His student wanted to open an academy of her own on Prime. She wanted to train humans in the methods he had taught her. She wanted to show the galaxy what humanity could become. She asked for his blessing. He gave it without hesitation. Within months, humans began arriving on Prime. They came from every nation on Earth, from every background, every age, every walk of life. Some were already fighters. Some had never held a weapon in their lives. All of them were hungry. Met the first class of recruits in the same training hall where she had first confronted. They stood before her in nervous rows, looking small and weak and human. Just as she had looked not so long ago. "I will not lie to you," she said. "What I am going to ask you to do will hurt. It will take years. You will want to quit every single day. Your bodies will break. Your minds will tell you it is impossible. Everyone around you will say you cannot succeed." She drew her 2 swords and held them ready. "But I am standing here. I have done what the galaxy said could not be done, and if I can do it, so can you." She looked at each face in turn. They measured our bodies and found us wanting. They measured our strength and found us weak. But they forgot to measure the one thing that truly matters. "What is that?" a young woman in the front row asked. Smiled. "Our refusal to accept their measurements." She dropped into her stance, both blades humming, both arms ready. "They say we cannot," she told her students, "so let us define what we can." In the years that followed, humans spread across the galaxy. Warriors trained in methods served on ships, stations, and planets throughout known space. They fought battles that should have been impossible to win. They achieved things that should have been beyond their biology. And in training halls on 100 different worlds, instructors who had once dismissed humanity began teaching a new lesson. "There is one species," they would say, "that does not accept limits. One species that believes the impossible can become possible through suffering and will. Be careful of humans, not because they are strong, not because they are fast, but because they refuse to stay weak." On Earth, Master passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was over 90 years old. His training hall had produced thousands of students who had gone on to change the galaxy. On his wall hung 2 wooden swords. Beneath them was a small plaque that read, "The body believes what the mind repeats." And across the stars, his student continued his legacy, teaching others that cannot was just a word. And words could be redefined.